Good morning and welcome to PSJA Java Chat, your morning chat with your favorite PSJA ISD Instructional Technology Integration Specialist, where we discuss EdTech tools and trends with invited guests and, of course, our morning coffee.
In episode 4 of Java Chat, Palacios Elementary CIT Jeanette Mijares shares her tech story, discusses Nearpod and her focus of using tech for her students, and explain how she has influenced teachers to integrate more technology in their teachings.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth interview, Java Chat, with our own CIT in elementary, Jeanette Rodriguez. Jeanette, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well today. How are you all? I'm so excited to be here today.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. I hope your pillow, like we were discussing, is not too upset with you this morning.
I can't make any promises.
That's why we have the coffee.
Yeah.
That coffee
Cheers.
is brewing.
Let's start this conversation with the first question.
All right.
Tell us about your educational background. How do you become Jeanette Mijares, CIT at Palacios Elementary?
It's actually a really funny story about me because you were actually involved in the story. So I started teaching 8 years ago, and Valentin was actually the CIT at our campus then. And so after the first year, Valentin ends up moving to a different campus. And so I was offered the position of technology CIT. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, I really have no idea what's going on. Like, it's my first year. It's my first year. I mean, in reality, all I owned then was like this old laptop iPad that was handed down by my sister and our campus laptop. And I mean, I really didn't have much knowledge other than what we had learned, like with trainings and stuff from Valentin. And so that's kind of how that started off. And so when I started, it's funny because CIT then was very different than what it is now, like with all the tools that we have available. You know, back then it was like Mimeo and Plickers. There's all these like different things. And now it's evolved into this really, really crazy, like it's a monster because there's so many things that we have available to us now that we didn't have then. And I think that's what's so neat, that because technology is growing so much and it's evolving, we get to see all of that just come into play and then see how it benefits our students. And I think that's one of the biggest things where I've seen how it's beneficial for our students. And if we really like invest the time and like try to learn, because this is one thing I know everybody at school, they're like, well, it's because you're just so good with technology. I'm like, guys, I wasn't this way. Like a lot of the things that I know now, I didn't know before. And so a lot of the times I think that because technology changes so much, it becomes very intimidating for some people. And so that's why a lot of the times people are very fearful of where that comes from. And so being at our campus, I've just been really fortunate to have a really good group of teachers that want to learn and they want to be part of, you know, something better for their students. And so that's kind of how we've come, because now we've been at it for 7 years and we've had a lot of great opportunities to learn and to grow together, because I know as CITs, we're just this really big family that we were able to help each other all the time and like grow together. So that's really fun. I think that's what I like the most about the position.
So Valentin was the one that kind of inspired you to get into the technology route?
Yes. And so I remember I would see him like running around like, hey, do you all want a training on Mimeos? Because that's what we would have back then. You know, you like come in, like connect the Mimeo and like do it really fast. And I mean, those were just, you know, the things that we would see then compared to what we see now. I think it's what's so different. And I think it's so fun because we've been able to learn a lot from each other. And I'm very grateful that Valentin gave me that opportunity, even though he had to move, but it just kind of sparked that technology injection in there. So thanks, Valentin.
Thank you, Jeanette. That actually, I'm not gonna lie, just brought a lot of memories when you said Mimeo and running around. Because you're right. I'm like, I was always running around all the time. And it just reminded me we were in the TIFF grant also that first year that you were teaching, and we had those CLCs before it went district wide, and I was able to incorporate technology into those CLCs. That was really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
But awesome. Thank you. Great job. Thank you for sharing.
All right, Jeanette, let's move on. You answered pretty much your background in technology and your educational experience. So share with us your experience about using technology for instructional purposes.
So I have this really cool story that I really like to share. And 2 years prior to COVID, I worked with one of the teachers. Her name is Ana Ortiz, and she's now actually a counselor at McKeever. but we taught second grade back then. And so this was before like the one-to-one Chromebooks and iPads and stuff. And so I remember she has the most amazing work ethic I've ever seen in somebody. And she's a veteran teacher, so she'd been teaching for quite some time. And I remember I would come home back then, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, and I would come home and I was just always working. And I remember one time I would tell Miss Ortiz, like, I'm so tired of running around on Fridays. I think that's kind of like the one thing that really sparked. So, but back in the day, we didn't have these like read alouds to the kids where you sign into forms, and then that wasn't a thing back then. But what was really big back then were the QR codes. And so I remember I told her one time, I was like, there has to be something that we can do where we're not running around going crazy, like reading every single question to 7 kids that have this accommodation. Like, I'm exhausted before lunchtime. And she's like, you're right. Like, I'm so exhausted, and I never thought of it that way. And so I remember I came home that day and I was on Instagram, and I'm a very visual person, which is why I think I like Instagram so much. And it was like a really quick reel. And it was this girl that I follow, and I think her name is like Miss West Best. And she talked about like the talk and comment extension. And so you would record yourself and it would give you a link. And so then I thought, well, what if we get that link, we get a QR code for it, we insert it into our test, and then the kids will just scan it. But then I was like, but we don't have devices. And so I remember I went home that day and I started like looking for all these devices that we had, like my brother's drawers and my sister's old drawers. And my mom like has like a comb brush, like a comb drawer, and she had like old cell phones
like
in there.
old cell phones. Whoa.
Yes. And so I just grabbed a whole bunch of them. At the end, I think it ended up with like 5 old devices. And I told Miss Ortiz, look, we're gonna try this out, see how it works. And so I remember the first time, what it would do is every time the kids would scan the QR code, they would listen to it, but it would bring up like a link. And she's like, well, Jeanette, they're gonna get so confused because all these links. I was like, no, we're gonna train them. They're gonna close the link and then they're gonna take a picture again. I mean, it was madness back then. But I remember that it was so cool because at the end, I was like, they did all the work. I didn't have to do anything. Obviously, like back then, we still had to print the test, right? But I mean, just going from having to running around and like going through every single student and like having them do all the work, I thought that's so cool. Like, that's so cool. And so I remember she was so excited. She's like, I never thought of it like this. Like, we just did something so easy, like just just grab a link, put it on a QR code, and then that's it. And I remember she was so excited. And so then she had also gone home and she had asked her kids for like old iPads that they had, her husband. I mean, we just came out with all these devices from nowhere. And so now I remember I saw her the other day and I was like, remember when we were running around like taking everyone's devices because we didn't have any? She's like, it was so cool. And like we would get like flimsy cases for them just so that the kids would be able to grab them on Fridays. But I think that things like that, I think it's what's really neat because you see how it evolved, because now it's so easy. We still use that application. We just put it on forms. The kids literally just click play and that's it. And I think that's so neat. And like I think it goes back to like the evolution of the way we started to the way we are now and how you learn it based on your needs and like the kids' needs, because at the end it's for the kids. So I think that's really cool.
And I like the way you brought up like social media. You learned that from following on Instagram. So it's really important, or if you're interested in technology and even other aspects of education, to develop that personal learning network. And social media is a good way to follow people and get good ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
I liked how sorry, Jeanette, I know you can hear me, but I'm having technical difficulties. So, but I like how you were talking about in this last question and then in the intro about like the evolution, right? Of like where we were, about how you being really resourceful and gathering devices just so you can get the kids going, to where we are now. And you were talking about the role of the CIT and how it's changed from when you started to where it is now. And you were talking about Plickers and all of these older apps that they're still around, but we just don't use them as much.
Yeah.
So in kind of going in that direction, because like you said, it's different now than it was back then. What is your favorite tech tool so far that you have utilized in your teaching?
I think for now, I want to say it's Nearpod. And it's so funny because I'm part of curriculum writing. And so the first year that we ended up with Nearpod, we had just finished using Pear Deck. And so I was in curriculum writing, and then Sanaida ended up connecting with one of the ladies, the coordinators, and she's telling them how now we're going to switch to Nearpod. And I go up and I was like, Sanaida, no, I just got used to Pear Deck. Like, why are you going to do this to me? And it was so funny because at school, a lot of the teachers, the way they the way they get influenced is by the way they see it being done. We're all very visual, and as educators, we need to see it done, because a lot of the times, they present these amazing tools and they're like, well, how do I use it? Like, it's awesome, but where do I get the time and stuff? And so I remember that I was like, Sanaida, no, why are you changing this to me? And so with Pear Deck, you're just adding, it was just basically adding a link on the bottom. And so with Nearpod, it's a little different because it adds like a whole another slide. And so my mind, like my educator mind was like, no, this is too complicated. Why are we adding all these things? And I was just not having it. I remember that first day. And then as you start getting used to it, I'm like, okay, well, there's no other way of going back. Like, I can't use Pear Deck because a lot of the tools were not going to be accessible anymore. So then I had to change my state of mind, and then I go to Nearpod. I'm like, holy moly, like, this is awesome. Like, it had so many different tools available. And I think that's one of the reasons why I push Nearpod a lot at our campus now, because it's like I tell them, you don't have to learn everything all over again. Like, all these different things are in the same place. You have so many different options to be able to use with your students, as compared to like, oh, you have to go through this website to do this. And I think that's one of the biggest things for teachers. Like, I don't want to have to go click every single place. Like, I just want it in one location. And I think that's what's so awesome about Nearpod, that everything is in one section and you can see that. And it's all located in one, and you have so many different options on there, from like games that the kids are thinking like, I'm just playing, but it's actually really fun for them. The virtual field trips, those are really awesome. Things like that I told them, like, you have that accessible to you, and it's all in one place. So I told them, like, always go for Nearpod when you really have nowhere else to, or what else to do, because it's really awesome. You just use what you already know, which is Google Slides, because I mean, you weren't used to PowerPoint, you're used to, you kind of transfer over to Google Slides, and it's all there. And so I think that's one of my favorites for that same reason, because you have so many options available in one location. So
that's awesome. I'm so glad that you're a Nearpod super user, because it is sometimes a little hard to pitch it, because I think people have this conception where it's like, oh, you have to do this Nearpod where it's like 20 slides and you have to use everything. And we try to emphasize, like, no, it could be like one activity. It could be like, but we really appreciate you using it and promoting it at your campus.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and we love that you love Nearpod, because in the district we use Nearpod. And I actually think that Nearpod is a little bit better than Pear Deck. It has a little more stuff in it.
Now I kind of kick myself because I was mad at Sanaida for changing over to Pear Deck. But
it's
yes,
okay. We learned about change, and we strive with change, and we learn to love new things. And I know that you use a lot of more distinct different tools. You talked about to me about how much you like Flip as well, and I thought you were going to talk about Flip, but I'm happy that you talked about Nearpod. So tell us now. So we know technology is awesome, and you've done really amazing work into trying to make, like, at the beginning, grabbing those devices. I actually had images of you rummaging through everything in your house. But we know that technology is not always 100% beautiful. It's like 99% beautiful. So tell us about some challenges that you have faced while using technology in your teaching, in your classroom, and now in your IB coaching.
Oh, okay. So one of the things, and I'm like, oh, I always kind of scratch my head on this, because I'm like, so I'm a really big fan of Mac. To me, it's just so easy because I just stream everything together, and that's just kind of how I've been able, like with my iPad and my computer and my cell phone. Like, to me, it was like, oh, I have to send myself something, or I have to do this. And so with AirDrop, it was really cool. But there's a problem with me using those devices on. It was on New Line, and I would tell Valentin, like, I hate this, I can't do this. It was so frustrating because it was always getting disconnected. And so I'd be like on a roll, and then whoop, disconnected. And so then to me, that was really frustrating, because one of the things that I had pushed out to my campus was using my iPad for teaching. So at our campus now, math is taught through an iPad. I mean, we don't have copies anymore. Like teachers just download it to their good notes on their iPad, and teachers are teaching from there. And so one of the things in the beginning, I would tell Valentina, like, it's always disconnecting. How am I supposed to like teach with this awesome tool? And it's always disconnecting. And so the direct connection for that was really frustrating for me. But now that we have the Montage app, I know it makes it a lot easier. But the only downside to that is if there's no Wi-Fi, there's no connection. And so that was kind of like where I just kind of like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But that's part of the technology portion of it. You know, sometimes you get things to work, and sometimes you're just gonna have to work a little harder and do things a little differently. But I think that's one of the things where you have something really great going on, and then I mean, it's not even your fault. It's just technology. I mean, there's just, you know how it can be really, really awesome. Things that are really, really awesome, sometimes they, you know, they fault a little bit, and it's just part of it. But I think that's just one of the things where I kind of like, I can't do this anymore because, you know, but I mean, other than that, I mean, I know a lot of the teachers, they say it's just too much sometimes, like there's just too many different applications sometimes. And I get that, but it's like, I tell them, don't worry about all of the things that I present to you. If it doesn't call you, then don't worry about it. Like, just leave it off to the side, you know, strengthen one thing. And then, you know, it could take you 1 year to learn how to use Flip. That's perfectly fine. Just worry about Flip that year, because as you start going on, because I know that can also be a really big frustration that I've heard, where it's just so much going on. Like, how am I supposed to just get it all going? And I totally get that. But, you know, it's just kind of like, just be open-minded to it, you know, be an Ivy scholar and be open-minded to it and let it come to you, let it call you, you know. So I think those are some of the things that I've seen that they either frustrate me or they frustrate others, per se.
I like what you tell your teachers, that, you know, if it doesn't call to you, don't use it, because there is a lot of technology out there, and it doesn't call to everybody in every situation. So they need to, you know, use what they're comfortable with. And of course, if they're not using anything, try something.
Yes, exactly.
Start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
Yeah.
Start with one.
So
Oh,
perfect.
definitely.
Thank
Love
you,
it,
Jeanette.
love
That
it.
was beautiful.
So how has technology changed your view in life and like your personal time?
I think, you know, before it was so funny because I hated Siri. Like, she was so annoying. I'm like, oh, she's always coming up and like my watch and everything. And it's funny because my husband's not tech savvy whatsoever, like at all. Like, something is missing here. I don't know what's going on. You fix it, type of thing. And so, but one thing he uses is Siri. And so one thing that you need to learn about my husband, he has a very thick accent. And so I would hear him like running around the house, like, Siri, put a timer. My husband loves to cook out. And so he like watches all these videos, right? And so he'll say like, Siri, put a timer for 1 hour. And Siri, put a timer for 10 minutes. And I was like, what is he doing? Like, why don't you just put the timer yourself? But it's so funny because just that one thing changes your whole dynamic. And I was like, honey, why do you always use Siri? She's so annoying. It's like, well, if my hands are dirty or something, I just tell her what to do. Like, she just does it for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Like, I can literally tell Siri what to do and she'll do it for me. And I'm very forgetful. Like, I'm very forgetful. And I'm like, that's so true. Why don't I just put like a reminder or a note or something? And Siri will do it for me. I don't even have to worry. I'm the type of person that says, I'm going to text you and I'll think about texting you for a whole week and I won't text you because I had to text you. That type of thing. So the fact that
you remember when you're running around and then you forget.
Yes. So I mean, so then I'm like, that's so true. Like, technology has so many ways to make our lives so much easier. And sometimes we're not even aware of how easy our lives can be because of it. And so I think that's one of the things that my not so very tech husband has showed me, that, I mean, you know, it's funny because I think like, that's why I'm always late for something, or I'm always forgetting something, because I don't set reminders or alarms for myself. And if I just tell Siri what to do, Siri's going to do it for me and I'm not going to have that problem anymore. So, so I think that's just one of the things. And you would think, because I'm so big on technology, that's just one of the things that I would do, you know, like, well, just tell her what to do, Jeanette, like, you're so good at it. But it's just one of those things that I'm like, oh, she's so annoying. She's always coming up on my watch or on my phone. So, I mean, things like that, I think even, and it goes back to, sometimes we kind of think that technology is like this massive thing, when in reality, it's like one tiny thing that you can use to make your life easier. And it makes a big difference in your own life. So I think that's just kind of the way I I would answer that question.
Wow, I love that little quote at the end.
You know what? I am going to trademark.
I need to write it down. I actually need to write that one down.
Jeanette, I thought you were gonna say in the story that Siri couldn't understand your husband because of his thick accent.
Yes, I was waiting for that too.
I thought the same thing too, and I was like, wow, like no, but she understands him very well, and I mean, and yeah.
That reminds me of the SNL sketch with Alexa, Platinum. I don't know if you saw it, Alexa Silver or something. There was an SNL sketch about 3 years ago, and they were making fun about like how people older age in the silver age, they forget things and they start calling Alexa Alize, Alicia, blah 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 blah, and then Alexa was trained to recognize any word that was close to Alexa.
I love it. Oh my god!
You need to watch it. It's
I think I'm gonna have to look it up because I'm so interested in watching that now.
Okay, Jen, let's go on to the next question. So, I think back when when we were in school, maybe in high school and a little bit of college, we didn't use nearly as much technology. I think when I started my first year, I was mimicking the way that I was taught, which was like not too much technology. It was like, oh, there's an overhead, take some notes, and then we're gonna have this paper-based test, But as we referred earlier, as the years have gone, technology's kind of evolved, and then it's become a lot more infused in the classroom. Well, COVID did a lot of that for us. So what I want to know is, through the years, what has inspired you to use technology in your classroom? Either was it a way of teaching to make it easier for you? Was it a mentor? Was it Valentin? What inspired you to start using a little bit more technology in your own classroom?
So I think a lot of it goes back to my students and their needs. And I saw myself as a student. And like you said, back then we didn't have, devices. In fact, I'm part of McAllen ISD. I grew up my whole life being in McAllen ISD. So I leave McAllen ISD in my senior year. The following year is when they integrated all those iPads across the district. Of course, right? Why would Jeanette get one? So, and then I saw how it was really revolutionary for them because they had so many different things that they would have available. And so as a kid, I think I had a lot of like I didn't really understand a lot of the things. To me, I was very visual. And back then, when you're just copying, it's not visual. You're just copying a bunch of notes. So I feel like I struggled a lot. And so then when I started teaching, I started seeing like, this is something that I need to change because I was a kid sitting in my classroom that didn't understand what was going on. And so then I started seeing like my kids need pictures. My kids need to feel like they can touch it, they can see it, they can hear it, and I think that's something that's so important because they have so many different tools that they can use. And I get it. And it's not going to call on all of them all the time. Like one video, it's not going to make a change for all of the students. But if it makes a change for at least one of my students, then another thing that I do is going to change another state of mind. And so technology gives you that opportunity to reach as many students through so many different platforms, depending on the way you use it. And so even if it's through repetition, through a lot of time to climbs for my students for vocabulary, if that's going to motivate my students that are kind of sluggish in the back and not wanting to do it, but hey, if that's going to get them motivated because I can incorporate a picture on there, or if I can, bold words because they couldn't see the board, all of those things, it's going to help them. I'm going to use it because that's the way that they're going to learn, and it's going to work for them, because I think it's so unfair to think, well, this is my way of teaching, and if you don't like it, too bad. Well, it's not going to work that way, and especially because we have so many, it's like we just talked about, there's so many different applications available. Like, let's use them and let's, strengthen what they know and what they can do, because we have that opportunity, especially now when we have one-to-one devices with our students, and I know for some, it's still just like, well, you take your test on the computer and that's it. And it's kind of like, well, they have so much more power than that. They have so much that they have at the palm of their hands. Just use it, like slightly start incorporating like one thing, like, hey, you know what, let's research this one topic. And you would be surprised at the things that the kids come up with. And then that's also being part of our IB section. We wanted them to be inquirers and to go and like think for themselves and like dig deeper, because kids are curious. They're so curious and they want to just keep learning. And what it might not necessarily be what you're teaching, but they want to keep learning. And I think that's what's so important.
Thank you. Very passionate. That's why we love you, Jeanette. So the next question, and we're going to have to keep it short because we have about 4 minutes left, but do you have any advice for a teacher that is reluctant to integrate technology in the classroom? Remember, I'm like, some of the times that technology doesn't work, and then we have those teachers that are like, I'm done with this. What will be that advice for those kind of teachers that are reluctant?
I think it's find what you need. And I say that because, and it goes back to one of the previous answers that I had responded. I can give you all of the different, resources available, but there's something that you need, regardless of how many years you've been teaching and how well those techniques have worked for you. There's one thing we all need. And so from there, and you also have to be very open-minded, because you would be surprised that, you're kind of keeping yourself back from that. And when you're able to just kind of expand, and it makes your life easier. And I think a lot of the times, whether we like to admit it or not, sometimes we're wrong. And it's just about, okay, what is it that you need and how is it going to make your life easier so that you can be open-minded to start adding just one more tool, even if it's till next year or to the year after, but you strengthen it and then you start adding more, because I get it. It does get very frustrating, especially if you don't feel like you're confident enough to use those different things. But when you start adding just like one more thing, but there's one thing we all always need. Every year it might be something different. 1 year it might be with classroom management. And one thing it might be, with my reading strategies or with my math. Every time it's going to be something different. We all need something, regardless of how many years of experience we have, but you always need one thing. And then once you find that one thing, ask whoever is super good with technology what you can use to strengthen it and to make your life easier. I think that's just the way we can go about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned being open-minded. Yeah. And then just trying it. Technology might not work perfect the first time you try it. Exactly. I'm going to tell you, it probably won't. But the more you use that tool and develop it, and over the year, it will become routine for the students, and it will become easier.
That reminded me of the story you were just telling with Miss Ortiz. I'm like, and probably that was the situation with Miss Ortiz, using the talk and comment that way probably got her to use more technology too. So thank you.
Yeah, she was open-minded to so many other things from them because she realized the impact it made on her and her students. And I think that's just what's so important.
Awesome. Jeanette, what has been your proudest moment in utilizing technology?
I think like going back now, and I think like sometimes Valentina will go, she's like, oh my God, your teachers are doing so much stuff with technology. And I don't necessarily see all the time because we're not in the classroom all the time. I don't get the opportunity. I'm no longer in the classroom. I'm not teaching anymore, but I still don't have the opportunity to go and like go through everybody. But it's so true, because it's so funny, because when we have new teachers come in our campus and we say like, oh, well, math is on our iPad. What do you mean math is on the iPad? They all freak out. But because it's so normal for us, it's like, yeah, everybody's just kind of like, just get on your iPad, and then I think that's so cool, because I know that that's something I was able to bring up to them and they were able to learn. And you go around sometimes and you're like, oh, Miss Martinez, you're using this. And she's like, just run with it. And you know what? Maybe I just planted a little seed and then they just take off from there. And I think that's what's so important. And it's like I tell them, you need to play with it in order for it to work, because I can show you all of the ways to use it. But if you don't play with it, it's not going to work. And so that's just kind of like the mentality that I try to instill in them, like, here, look, try this out. And then from there, it's kind of like when you go into loopholes on Instagram or on TikTok, and you end up like, what? It's the same thing when you start learning about different tools on technology. And
Awesome. Planting that seed. That's
yes.
Thing. And having them visualize it. That's when people see it and that it's going to work in a classroom. Perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do we have enough time or for
sure,
last
go
question?
right ahead, Marco.
Go ahead.
Okay, all righty. So, this is our last question. What do you think? Oh, I think we've known you for a good little while, so I think we have our own perception of this question, but we want to know from the source here. Ooh. What do you think sets you apart from other educators?
I don't know. I mean, I really can't like put myself in that like other educators, but I think one of the things that I always do is put myself in their situation. I think that's what's so important. Like I always put myself in that situation. Like, what if I was me? Because and you know, it's funny because sometimes you get like, oh, what do you mean you don't know what to do? Like, you know, sometimes, and it sounds really bad, but you've done it so many times. And you're like, well, what do you mean you don't know how to do that? And I've always had to like, okay, I know how to do it, but I've done it thousands of times. This person has never done it. And so that's why they're asking. You know, if they knew how to do it, they wouldn't be asking me. And so I always like, okay, where are they coming from? I think I always like put it in that perspective, like where are they coming from and why do they need to know this? Because that's going to help me go back and help them a lot better when I'm approaching them and like helping them out. And I think that I feel I'm very approachable. you know, I don't want to make it to where technology is like this big scary thing that they just don't want to ask you. And it's funny because sometimes they're like, Miss Mijares. And I'm like, yes. And so then they, you know, that's where they start to feel like it's because this, and then they just go off. And I'm like, that's perfect. Look, let's go help you out. Let's see where it's coming from. Is it just this or just that? And I think that's kind of where you just make it to the point where you can find yourself in them and how you were back then when you first did it to be able to help them out. Because I think that's one of the biggest things for me in technology is helping teachers out. I feel like that's my position, to help them out and to help them expand their knowledge. But I have to put myself in their perspective before I can actually help them. So
that's awesome, because sometimes we think like, since we know it,
yeah,
we think people might be at a higher level of knowledge than what they are. So I like that you're able to put yourself in their shoes, basically.
Yeah.
And I envision it as a teacher with their students. Like, you need to understand that the reason they are asking you the questions is because they don't know.
Yeah,
so we take things for granted when we know something that everybody should know, like a language. Like some people that speak Spanish might take for granted words that people don't understand, or any other language, like things like that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great perspective. Thank you so much. This is the end of our Java chat. You were amazing.
Yay.
Great information. Yes. Thank you for sharing with us. We're going to be bedazzling the video and sharing it out to the masses. And you make us so proud, Jeanette. You seriously always go above and beyond. And you know, we know that you're very, very busy all the time. They keep you busy. Thank you for being an amazing CIT.
No, and thank you guys for all your help, because I mean, we are not the CITs, we are on our own. You know, it's a big family, it's a big community, and I know all the CITs out there listening. I know you like bombard you with each other's messages sometimes on our chat, but it's just so great that we have those communities that are able to, you know, help each other out. And like, so many teachers, and they're so talented and they have so much knowledge, and I think that's just so great that we're able to share that. And you're the ones that are making this happen, because you are able to bring us all together and like bring so much more knowledge. So thank you guys as well. Thank you so much.